What's going on, everyone? My name is Talon Sai and you are watching Sunday GUNDAY. I hope you guys are having a great Sunday so far. Today we're taking another sort of recap look at an event that I was at last year. This event was known as Boulders and Bullets. It was put on by Wheeler Tools, who I'm sure a lot of you guys out there are familiar with. And this was probably the most fun that I've ever had at any gun-related event. I've already made 2 videos from this event, one over on my main channel, which was probably the most fun. I ended up taking the van and the Razor out to Moab. We ran a lot of famous trails like Fins and Things. We also did Hell's Revenge, took the Razor up Hell's Gates, and that was a hell of a good time. And then on Sunday GUNDAY, there's a video of us starting the day off at Cliffhanger's Jeep Rentals right there just south of Moab. And Wheeler had this incredible spread of parts and accessories and of course their own tools to allow us to put together 2 different builds. So again, today we're taking a look at a rifle and a pistol that we put together. Check out those videos first up in the link in the card and in the description down below. And today we're gonna take a little bit more of a deep dive look at both of these builds, starting with this custom build right here, using mainly parts from both Aero Precision and Ballistic Advantage. Now, unfortunately, with the rules here on this platform, I'm not able to actually show you guys step by step how these builds went, but it started with picking a bunch of different parts. I opted for a midweight barrel coming from Ballistic Advantage. This is a 223 Wild with a 1-in-8 twist. On the outside of that, you will find the Atlas R1 Ballistic Advantage handguard. And then out on the end, we have the Epsilon VG6 muzzle device, and this thing is pretty wild. Moving our way back this rifle, we have Aero Precision, both an upper and lower. The lower has a nice flared magazine well with an integrated trigger guard. There's a fairly standard mil-spec trigger in there. And then for the other components, we have an Aero Precision breech charging handle, a Magpul MOE grip, as well as a Magpul MOE SL stock. On top, I have a Crimson Trace Hardline Pro MOA mounted up to a Wheeler scope mount. This is a 1:8 optic and it does have an illuminated reticle in there. And then up front, just like on some previous builds that you may have seen here on the channel, we have a CMR 301 Railmaster 1000 lumen weapon light with a laser combo. Now for the pistol that we built, I'm no stranger to these. We ended up putting together new Polymer 80 AFT kits. The AFT is sort of like an inside joke in the industry, but it really means assemble for thyself. So this is a Polymer 80 gun through and through, Polymer 80 slide on the top with some aggressive serrations in both the front and the rear. You of course have the Polymer 80 frame, which is based on a Gen 3 Glock. I really like the way that these feel in my hand. It gets rid of that Glock knuckle because of the undercut trigger guard. And then on the inside, I opted for a flat face Polymer 80 trigger, and we're gonna talk about that a little bit more later. Now, just like one of my previous recap videos, before we get into shooting these guns today, let's take a look back at the event, just some shooting highlights from that, and then we'll dive into some more mags.
Who's next?
Who's up? Oh, really? Yeah, it was low. It was low again. It's all right.
So hey, bring it up.
And now back to today. One of the things that I wanted to highlight, not really on the gun, but these magazines. They had a few different laser engraved magazines to pick from, and this one just looks so sick. A skeleton in a spacesuit. So I've got a couple mags loaded up. Let's see how these things perform. Thing shoots so flat. Now in the previous video here on Sunday GUNDAY, when we were actually shooting these at the event, we had the treat of shooting out to like over 1,000 yards. I'm back here from 100 right now, so let's dial in this scope a little bit and see how we do. It's a workout freehanding this at that distance. Now moving on to the Polymer 80 AFT. One thing that I did change from the previous video on this gun was the trigger. When I installed the trigger initially, there was some kind of issue with it, so I swapped it out for a newer Polymer 80 trigger, and now this is gonna be my first time shooting it with the new trigger in there. Let's see how it does. Feels much, much better. Alright guys, I'm slowly running out of daylight, so let's make this one quick. We're going to start with some of the cons, and out of both of these guns, I prefer the Polymer 80 AFT the least. Now Polymer 80, where they started providing frames and jigs and all of these kits that allow you to assemble a gun, that's when I first loved Polymer 80. That's like one of the main selling features of having a gun like this. These, however, come serialized, which sort of defeats the whole purpose, at least in my eyes, of a Polymer 80. You're looking at about the same price as a Gen 5 Glock 19, so I would put these two right next to each other in the same category, same almost all around. And there are some good things about this, like the grip. It feels really good in my hand. The grip texture is great. I like the undercut trigger guard. The slide is nice and simple. It has great serrations in both the front and rear. And then the trigger. Initially the trigger sucked, but I swapped it out, and now this one is much, much nicer. Here's a quick look at this. Take up, not all the way back in the trigger guard like it was before, and then pretty heavy brake, might be like a 4.5 pound trigger. Reset, feels pretty good, not quite on par with a Glock stock trigger, but I like the actual shoe. They do also offer a curved version if you're into curved triggers, so there are a lot of good things about this, but when you compare this right next to a Glock, it's just really not for me. If you're gonna get a gun that's serialized, I personally would opt for the real deal. I wasn't seeing the best accuracy out of this. I don't know if that was just me shooting today, but I also shot my Glock 19 today and I was super accurate with it, so I want to say it is the gun. It could be something to do with the manufacturing between the slide and the barrel. I did put the gun together myself, so maybe it's an error on my part, just the way I put it together. Overall, it feels really good, but I didn't shoot it all that well when compared to a normal Glock. So if I had to put this head to head with the rifle that we just shot, this thing would definitely take a second seat to this guy right here. Now, I just filmed another recap video of the Romp in the Swamp event where we were taking a look at the M&P 15 from Performance Center. The thing that I loved about that gun was the Performance Center muzzle brake. This one right here, the Epsilon 556 VGK, this thing might shoot even flatter than that Performance Center muzzle device did. That is super helpful, of course, when you're shooting with an optic. I believe I said that this was a 1:8 before. It's actually a 1:6, the Crimson Trace Hardline Pro. I actually mounted this thing up using Wheeler tools, of course, because it was a Wheeler event, and they have these new little magnetic levels that you put on the rail and on the optic, and then you can sort of fine tune it to get it super precise. We then bore sighted them inside at about like 25 yards, maybe. And this thing has been dead accurate ever since then. So having a really nice flat shooting rifle like this, coupled with a 1:6, it allows you to shoot accurately at some pretty far distances. Now, everything else on this build is stuff that I can recommend. I get a ton of questions, emails, DMs of people asking, what should I do for my first AR? Can you recommend any companies out there? And if you're not gonna build one yourself, I would recommend taking a look at some of the complete builds from both Ballistic Advantage and Aero Precision. I would also encourage you to just build your own with pretty much the same components. Again, this is a mixture of Ballistic Advantage barrel and rail, Aero Precision upper and lower, Aero Precision trigger in there. It's not super fancy. It's probably pretty affordable for most people out there. Just get some good high quality components like the Magpul furniture on here, the Wheeler scope mount. If you're getting real wild, you can opt for a light like this right here, 1000 lumens coming from Crimson Trace. And there's really not a bad part on this rifle. The ergonomics feel good. It's a pretty standard AR, so there's not a whole lot to mention. I think other than the muzzle device, one of my other favorite pieces would be this rail. The rail is really lightweight, feels good in the hand. You got M-lock all around, as well as the top Picatinny rail for mounting accessories. This ended up being a really solid build thanks to Wheeler, Ballistic, and Aero. And if you're looking for quality AR parts and accessories, I would take a look at all of the companies that we just highlighted in this video. There's a lot of good stuff going on here. I typically don't shoot with a variable optic like this. This is probably only one of my ARs that I have an actual scope mounted up to it. So maybe in the future we will bring this thing back out here, move over to the longer range and shoot out to like 800 yards. If that's something that you guys would be interested in, let me know in the comments down below. I don't do a whole lot of long distance shooting in my own like free time, but we can definitely make that happen. Now, if you guys have any questions on either the Polymer 80 AFT or this build right here, let me know in the comments down below. Check out the other videos that I've been referencing throughout this video, especially the one over on the main channel. That was such a fun video to make, and I'm sure a lot of you guys will dig a lot of the stuff that we did throughout that video. I think that's going to be all for today. So if you're new here, consider clicking subscribe. I make new videos every other week. As always, thanks for watching. I'll talk to you in the next one.